Welcome to HFY Galaxy Tales. Like this video and subscribe the channel for more HFY stories. The War Council chamber reeked of overconfidence and expensive incense, which, frankly, seemed like a terrible combination. Commander Vrital stood at the head of the obsidian table, all 7 of his eye stalks focused on the holographic display floating before us. His mandibles clicked with what I assumed was pride, though it could have been indigestion. Hard to tell with his species. Behold, he announced, spreading his 4 arms wide like some kind of theatrical performer, the perfect trap. I leaned back in my gravity chair, trying not to roll my secondary eyes. Perfect. Sure. Because the last 11 perfect traps had worked out so well for the Galactic Coalition. The human they called Marcus Flynn had walked through each one like they were tourist attractions, leaving behind smoking craters and our collective dignity. With all due respect, Commander, began Sub-Officer Krell, her scales shifting to a nervous yellow, we said that about the gravitational anomaly on Perseus Prime. And the quantum minefield at Sector 7, added Tactical Advisor Thorne, his thermal vents releasing anxious steam. Vrital's eye stalks swiveled toward them with enough force to make both officers flinch. This time is different. This time, we have studied the human. We have analyzed every recorded encounter, every tactical decision, every biological quirk of his irritating species. I had to admit, the trap looked impressive on paper. The abandoned fortress on Kelvin 9, a frozen moon that made ice planets look tropical. 300 concealed weapon emplacements. Energy barriers that could withstand a supernova. Sensor net so dense a photon couldn't sneeze without us knowing about it. And at the center, carefully leaked intelligence about a supposed coalition weapons cache that could shift the entire war. He will come, Vrital continued, his voice dripping with certainty. The humans cannot resist their compulsion to interfere, to heroically stumble into situations that any rational species would avoid. The bait is in place, asked General Thax, her cybernetic enhancements whirring softly. Confirmed. Our intelligence operatives have ensured the information reached Terran Command. They will send Flynn. They always send Flynn. That much was true. Marcus Flynn had become something of a legend in the past 8 cycles. A human special operations agent who seemed to treat the laws of physics as friendly suggestions. He had escaped from a black hole prison, not by using the emergency quantum tunnels like a normal being, but by jury-rigging a distress beacon into a makeshift propulsion system. He had infiltrated the Kethros hive by convincing the guard drones he was a new model, armed with nothing but audacity and a hand-drawn ID badge. The human was either brilliantly insane or insanely brilliant, and frankly, both options terrified me. Deployment teams are ready? Vrital asked. All 7,000 troops are in position, confirmed Commander Yalrix, her translator adding a smug undertone to her words. Heavy assault mechs, shock troopers, aerial units, everything. The moment Flynn enters the fortress, we seal all exits and converge. I raised one of my smaller appendages. And if he doesn't use the exits? The silence that followed was delicious. What do you mean? Vrital asked, his voice carefully controlled. I mean, Commander, that Flynn has never done what we expected. Not once. Not ever. Why would he start now? There are no other ways out, Vrital said, mandibles clicking rapidly. We have accounted for every possible escape route. Every ventilation shaft. Every maintenance tunnel. Every structural weakness. Unless he can phase through solid matter, he is trapped. Right, I muttered. Just like he was trapped on Station Omega. And the dreadnought Vengeance. And that time on Earth's moon when we had him surrounded by 4 entire battalions. Thorne's vents hissed. He destroyed the moon base by overloading the water recycling system. Who does that? A human, several of us answered simultaneously. Vrital slammed one appendage on the table, creating a satisfying thud. Enough. This time, we are prepared. This time, we win. Initiate Operation Frozen Cage. The next 72 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Sensor teams reported nothing. Reconnaissance drones found nothing. Even our long-range psychic scanners, operated by the Mindweaver monks from the outer reaches, detected nothing unusual. Just endless ice, howling winds, and the fortress sitting there like a very expensive paperweight. "Maybe he's not coming," suggested Krell hopefully. "He is coming," Vrital insisted, though I noticed 2 of his eye stalks had developed a nervous twitch. The intelligence was too valuable to ignore. "Or maybe," I offered, "he saw right through our intelligence leak and is currently doing something far worse somewhere else." Before Vrital could respond, alarms erupted across every console. Lights flashed. Speakers crackled. Officers scrambled to their stations with varying degrees of grace, which in Thorne's case meant he knocked over 3 chairs and a beverage dispenser. "Report." Vrital barked. "Unidentified craft approaching Kelvin 9, announced the sensor operator, her voice pitched high with excitement. "Small, single-pilot vessel. Terran design. Minimal armament." "It is him," Vrital breathed, all 7 eyes locked on the display. "Activate all defensive systems. Prepare to engage." "Sir, should we shoot him down now?" asked one of the weapons officers. "No, you fool. We want him inside the fortress. Let him land. Let him think he has infiltrated successfully. Then we spring the trap." I watched the small craft descend toward the fortress landing platform, my thoughts swirling like the ice storms outside. Something felt wrong. No, not wrong exactly. Too easy. Too straightforward. Flynn never did straightforward. The craft touched down with barely a whisper of displaced snow. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Every eye in the command center stared at the screen showing the landing platform, our collective breathing creating a symphony of biological anxiety. Then the hatch opened. Marcus Flynn stepped out, and I got my first good look at the human who had caused the Coalition so much grief. He was tall by human standards, though average by galactic ones. Dark hair that looked like it had been styled by a wind tunnel. A scar across his left cheek that suggested either combat experience or a really aggressive shaving accident. He wore light armor, carried a standard energy rifle, and had an expression of complete boredom on his face. "He looks so ordinary," whispered General Thax. "The deadliest ones always do," I muttered. Flynn looked directly at one of our concealed cameras, and I swear to the 7 suns he winked. Then he started walking toward the main entrance, casual as anything, like he was taking a morning stroll through a park instead of entering a military fortress designed to be his tomb. "All units, stand by," Vrital ordered, his voice tight. "Wait for him to reach the central chamber where the fake weapons cache is located. Then seal every exit simultaneously. No mistakes." We watched Flynn make his way through the fortress corridors. He didn't sneak. Didn't run. Just walked normally, occasionally stopping to examine wall panels or architectural details like he was a tourist raiding the decor. At one point, he actually paused to tie his bootlace. The audacity was almost admirable. "Approaching central chamber," reported the tactical officer. "Prepare to activate containment fields," Vrital said. Flynn entered the main chamber, a massive space 300 meters across with our fabricated weapons cache sitting prominently in the center. We had made it look good too. Crates stamped with official markings. Energy signatures that matched actual Coalition military hardware. Even some fake documents scattered around for authenticity. Flynn looked at it all, then looked up at the ceiling. And smiled. "Now!" Vrital shouted. "Seal everything." Energy barriers slammed into place across every exit. Blast doors thicker than a battleship hull locked down. The weapon emplacements emerged from their concealed positions, targeting systems locking onto Flynn from 700 different angles. Troops began teleporting in, forming an ever-tightening perimeter. Marcus Flynn, Vrital announced over the loudspeakers, his voice echoing through the fortress. You are completely surrounded. Your ship has been destroyed. There is no escape. Surrender, and we promise you will be treated according to the Galactic Conventions for prisoners of war. Flynn just stood there, still smiling, hands in his pockets like he had all the time in the universe. Last chance, human, Vrital growled. Flynn finally spoke, his voice carrying a distinct tone that my translator interpreted as amusement mixed with pity. You guys built this whole fortress just to catch me? Yes, Vrital said proudly. The perfect trap. Huh, Flynn said, walking slowly around the chamber, examining the walls. Must have cost a fortune. All these soldiers. The energy systems. The planning. Lot of effort. Indeed. Now surrender. Here is the thing though, Flynn continued, stopping at what looked like a completely ordinary section of wall. You made a mistake. Impossible, Vrital sputtered. We accounted for everything. You accounted for me trying to escape. Totally different situation. Before anyone could process that statement, Flynn pulled a small device from his belt and slapped it against the wall. Lights blinked. Something beeped. Then a section of the wall simply vanished, revealing a shaft that definitely, absolutely, was not in any of our schematics. What is that? Screamed Vrital, all 7 eyes straining forward. Flynn grinned. Your cooling system maintenance shaft. Runs straight through the moon's crust to the geothermal vents below. You know, for emergency heat regulation during power failures. Safety requirement for all coalition military installations built in extreme cold environments. He started climbing into the shaft. But that is not an exit. Vrital protested. That leads to a 3-kilometer drop into superheated steam vents. You will be boiled alive. Probably, Flynn agreed cheerfully. Unless someone, let's say hypothetically, hacked your environmental controls about 6 hours ago and redirected those vents to create a nice cushion of regulated steam pressure that a person could ride like a slide all the way down to the underground service tunnel that connects to your command center. The command center. Our command center. Where we were currently standing. Oh no, I said quietly. All units, return to command center immediately. Vrital shouted, panic finally cracking his authoritative tone. Flynn gave us a little salute through the camera feed. Thanks for the shortcut, guys. Really saved me a lot of walking. Then he dropped into the shaft and disappeared. What followed was chaos of the highest order. Alarms blared as 7,000 troops tried to reverse their positions. Officers shouted contradictory commands. Somehow, Thorne managed to knock over the same 3 chairs again. I just sat there, watching the madness unfold, and started laughing. Because of course. Of course the human didn't try to escape the trap. He used it as a shortcut to his real objective. The temperature in the command center dropped noticeably, which had nothing to do with Kelvin 9's climate and everything to do with the collective terror freezing our internal fluids. Somewhere beneath us, Marcus Flynn was sliding through a maintenance shaft we had completely forgotten existed, heading straight toward our supposedly impregnable headquarters. Seal the lower access tunnels. Vrital commanded, his mandibles clicking so fast they created a sound like malfunctioning machinery. Deploy security teams to every possible entry point. Get me a visual on that human right now. The sensor operator, a young Felthorian named Kix whose spots were flashing panic colors, frantically worked his console. Sir, the shaft network is too dense. Too much interference from the steam systems. I cannot get a lock on his position. Then drain the steam. Vrital bellowed. Sir, if we drain the steam, the shaft temperature will drop to minus 200 degrees in approximately 4 minutes. The human will freeze solid. Excellent. Do it. Commander, I interrupted, finally standing from my chair. If Flynn hacked our environmental systems 6 hours ago, what makes you think he didn't anticipate that exact countermeasure? Vrital turned all 7 eye stalks toward me with an intensity that would have been intimidating if I wasn't already resigned to the disaster unfolding around us. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that draining the steam might be exactly what he wants us to do. That is ridiculous. Why would he want to freeze to death? Before I could answer, Kix shouted from his station. Sir. Steam system is not responding to shutdown commands. In fact, pressure is increasing throughout the lower shaft network. Override it manually. Trying, sir, but the system is locked out. Someone replaced our security protocols with something called a firewall virus that keeps showing me images of a small Terran animal with text saying, "Nice try, better luck next time." I moved closer to look at Kix's screen. Sure enough, a picture of an Earth cat wearing sunglasses stared back at us with that caption. The human had trolled us through our own security system. Magnificent and infuriating in equal measure. Forget the steam, Vrital decided, his tactical mind finally catching up. Fortify this command center. Deploy all available troops in defensive positions. If he wants to come here, we will give him a reception he will not survive. For the next 17 minutes, controlled chaos transformed into organized panic. Blast barriers erected inside the command center. Heavy weapons positioned at every corridor entrance. Elite shock troopers teleported in wearing full combat armor that made them look like mobile fortresses. General Thax personally took command of the defensive positions, her cybernetic targeting system scanning for threats. I found myself standing next to Krell near the main holographic display, both of us trying to look useful while staying out of the way of actual soldiers. How do you think he will enter? Krell whispered, her scales shifting through nervous color patterns like a malfunctioning display screen. Honestly, I have stopped trying to predict human behavior. It only leads to disappointment and involuntary molting. Lower shaft access point alpha showing activity, reported one of the security officers. Every weapon in the room swiveled toward the northern corridor entrance. Soldiers tensed. Fingers, appendages, and neural triggers hovered over firing mechanisms. The blast door leading to that corridor was solid dura steel, thick enough to withstand antimatter explosives. A small circular section of that door began glowing red. Then white. Then it simply fell inward with a clang that echoed through the suddenly silent command center. Through the hole stepped Marcus Flynn, completely unharmed, not even sweating despite having apparently ridden a steam vent for 3 kilometers. He held what looked like a modified plasma cutter in one hand and that same expression of mild boredom on his face. "Afternoon, folks," he said pleasantly. "Hope I am not interrupting anything important." "Fire!" Vrital screamed. The air erupted with enough energy discharge to power a small city. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, particle beams, and several exotic weapons I could not even identify converged on Flynn's position. The noise was deafening. The light was blinding. The sheer destructive force would have vaporized a heavy assault mech. When the smoke cleared, Flynn was not there. Where did he go? Thax demanded, her targeting systems whirring frantically. "Above you," I shouted, having spotted movement in my peripheral vision. Flynn had somehow used the initial barrage as cover to grapple up to the ceiling supports. He now hung there like some kind of predatory creature, still smiling that infuriating smile. In his free hand, he held what appeared to be several small spheres. "You know what I love about Coalition command centers?" Flynn called out conversationally. "You build them with such high ceilings for all your tall species. Very inclusive. Also very tactical." He dropped the spheres. "Grenades," someone shouted unnecessarily, because yes, obviously grenades. Except they were not explosive grenades. They were EMP charges specifically calibrated to disable electronics without harming organic matter. I knew this because the lights went out, every console died, and half the weapons in the room stopped functioning, but none of us died. The emergency backup systems kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in dim red lighting that made the entire situation feel even more like a nightmare. Flynn dropped from the ceiling, landed in a roll, and came up next to our primary data core. The most heavily guarded piece of equipment in the room, surrounded by 6 elite guards who immediately moved to intercept him. He did not fight them. Instead, he pulled out what looked like a data spike and jammed it into the core's access port. "Stop him!" Vrital shrieked, rushing forward with his personal guard. But it was already too late. The spike pulsed with light. Information began downloading at speeds that made our sensors smoke. Flynn stood there calmly, one hand on the spike, the other checking what appeared to be a Terran wrist chronometer. 12 seconds, he muttered. Come on, come on." The guards reached him. Flynn finally moved, but not to fight. He grabbed the data spike, yanked it free, and dove between the legs of the largest guard. Rolled. Came up running toward the eastern corridor. Which was, of course, blocked by 200 armed soldiers. "Surrender, Flynn." General Thax commanded, her own weapon aimed with cybernetic precision. There is nowhere left to run. Flynn skidded to a halt, glanced at the soldiers, then looked up at the ceiling again. Specifically at the massive climate control vent that we had installed to manage heat from all our electronics. "You have got to be kidding me," Krell whispered. Flynn was not kidding. He pulled another device from his apparently infinite supply of gadgets, aimed it at the vent, and fired. A grappling cable shot upward, attached to the vent cover, and retracted so fast it yanked Flynn off his feet and straight up into the ventilation system. The vent cover fell down moments later with a pathetic clatter. "After him," Vrital commanded. "Send drones into the vents. Track his movements. Do not let him escape." But even as officers scrambled to comply, I walked over to the data core and examined it. The access port was scorched. The security logs were completely wiped. And according to the diagnostic display that was flickering weakly, approximately 7,000 classified files had been copied in those 12 seconds. "Commander," I called out quietly. He got what he came for. The command center fell silent except for the hum of struggling backup systems. "What did he take?" Vrital asked, his voice hollow. I pulled up the theft log. Everything. Fleet positions. Supply routes. Communication protocols. Classified research projects. Diplomatic codes. Basically our entire strategic database for this sector. But that is impossible. Those files are encrypted with quantum-level security. It would take years to decrypt them. Unless, I said, pulling up a fragment of code left behind on the system, you planted a decryption algorithm 6 hours ago when you first hacked the environmental controls. An algorithm that has been quietly working this entire time, preparing everything for a quick extraction. Vrital stared at the code, his eye stalks drooping in defeat. He planned this entire operation from the beginning. The fortress was never his target. No, I agreed. We were. Or rather, our data was. He used our own trap as transportation. Saved himself the trouble of infiltrating a heavily defended command center by having us bring 7,000 troops to a remote location, leaving this place comparatively vulnerable. But we still have thousands of soldiers here. Yes, and he walked past all of them by using maintenance shafts and ventilation systems. Infrastructure we installed ourselves. He turned our own base into a navigation network. Thorne, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Sir, receiving a transmission. Audio only. It is coming from inside our own communication system." "Play it," Vrital said tiredly. Flynn's voice filled the command center, clear and cheerful. "Hey guys. Marcus Flynn here. Just wanted to say thanks for the hospitality. The steam slide was actually pretty fun, though I might have some minor burns in places I would rather not discuss. Also, I am leaving you a parting gift as thanks for being such gracious hosts. A gift? Vrital repeated suspiciously. Yeah. See, while I was downloading your files, I uploaded a little something to your network. A comprehensive analysis of every security flaw in your current defensive systems. Diagrams showing exactly how I infiltrated your base. Recommendations for improvements. Think of it as a professional courtesy from one tactical operative to another. I pulled up the file Flynn had left behind. Sure enough, it was a detailed report, professionally formatted, with helpful annotations and even some encouraging comments about what we had done correctly. You are giving us intelligence? Vrital asked the empty air, confusion evident in his tone. Well, yeah, Flynn's voice continued. I mean, where is the fun in beating you guys if you do not learn and adapt? I need you to keep getting better, keep challenging me. Otherwise, this whole war thing gets boring. Plus, I figure if you improve your security, you will build even more elaborate traps, which means even more interesting ways for me to not use them as intended. Everybody wins. You are insane, Vrital stated. Probably, Flynn agreed cheerfully. Oh, and one more thing. That weapons cache you set up as bait in the fortress? I actually took it. Figured since I was already there, might as well. Hope that was okay. Consider it my consulting fee. Anyway, got to run. Places to infiltrate, data to steal, you know how it is. See you next time, Commander. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. We just stood there in our damaged command center, surrounded by expensive equipment and highly trained soldiers, all of which had been rendered completely useless by one human with a knack for creative problem solving. Finally, Krell broke the silence. Did he just steal our fake weapons, consult us on our security vulnerabilities, and escape with our entire database while using our own trap as public transportation? Yes, I confirmed. And he did it all in under 40 minutes. 37 minutes, actually. I think I need to request a transfer, Krell said quietly. Vrital slowly lowered himself into his command chair, all seven eye stalks staring at nothing in particular. We cannot win against this species, can we? I walked over and placed a supportive appendage on his shoulder. Commander, we set the perfect trap. We used every resource available. We planned for every contingency we could imagine. And Marcus Flynn treated it like a convenient shortcut while simultaneously teaching us how to do better next time. That is not a fight we are losing. That is a lesson we are receiving. A very expensive, humiliating lesson, Thax added, holstering her weapon. The best ones usually are, I agreed. Somewhere far above us, I imagine Flynn was already aboard whatever backup ship he had stashed elsewhere on Kelvin 9, reviewing the stolen data and probably enjoying a Terran beverage called coffee that supposedly tasted terrible but kept humans functional. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I wondered what kind of trap we would build next, knowing full well that Flynn would find some impossible way to turn it to his advantage. Because that was the thing about humans. They did not win by being stronger or faster or more technologically advanced. They won by looking at problems from angles nobody else considered, by turning disadvantages into opportunities, by treating the impossible as merely improbable. They won by being absolutely, infuriatingly, brilliantly unpredictable. Vrital finally stood, straightening his posture with visible effort. All units, return to standard defensive positions. Begin implementing Flynn's security recommendations immediately. And someone find me whoever approved building a command center with ventilation shafts large enough for a human to crawl through. As officers scattered to their tasks, I returned to my station and pulled up Flynn's report. Despite myself, I started reading. The analysis was genuinely impressive, thorough and insightful. He had identified 17 vulnerabilities I had not even considered. At the bottom of the report was a final note in Flynn's handwriting. P.S. Your incense and overconfidence combination actually smells kind of nice. Consider keeping it. Adds character. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud, drawing confused looks from nearby officers. Because really, what else could you do when faced with a species that treated galactic warfare like an elaborate game, security systems like puzzles, and enemies like future friends who just did not know it yet? Humans. Absolutely impossible. Absolutely unstoppable. Absolutely worth studying if we ever hope to survive sharing a galaxy with them. I made a mental note to request assignment to Terran Studies. Someone had to figure out how their minds worked, even if that someone probably needed therapy afterward. Commander Vrital was already planning our next trap. I could see it in the determined angle of his eye stalks. And somewhere out there, Marcus Flynn was probably already planning how to use it as a shortcut. The war continued. But honestly, I was starting to suspect we were fighting the wrong battle. The real question was not how to trap humans. It was how to learn to think like them before someone else did. Because any species that could turn a death trap into an express elevator to their objective was not just dangerous. They were the future. And the rest of us were just trying to catch up.